Welcome to Fox 54 News at 6. I'm Logan Alexandra Russell. Owens Crossroads holding a public hearing right now. The city is considering adding a property tax increase that would benefit the city's fire protection services, allowing them to purchase new gear and additional response vehicles. The proposal calls for an additional 3 mills or 30 cents per $100 of assessed value. Owens Crossroads officials say the property tax increase will result in $60 to $100 per property in the city. Fox 54's Gabe Glassman explains how this increase would impact residents.
Owens Crossroads is deciding whether or not to bring a property tax increase to the city. If approved, the generated funds would go to fire protection services. A 3 mil tax increase is expected to bring in more than $100,000 each year. City officials say the revenue would go to operational needs in the fire department. This includes bringing in more personnel, replacing outdated equipment, and buying 2 emergency vehicles to help with response times.
We don't have the funds to be able to update outdated equipment so that we can protect and have good firefighter safety. Our SCBAs is what they call self-contained breathing apparatus that we use, that we put on our back so that we can go into fires. It's so old I can't even get replacement parts for it when it goes through its annual certification test, and it's bad. It's about making our fire service reliable and dependable and modernized so that we have the equipment we need to respond to whether it's a fire emergency or a medical emergency. We have the tools and equipment for our personnel to use.
This tax increase would need approval from residents. The city council will vote to create a referendum election at their meeting on July 28th. That vote would happen on September 29th. From Owens Crossroads, Gabe Glassman, Fox 54 News.
City officials say the tax increase would begin at the start of the 2027 fiscal year and run through 2033. While some of the Tennessee Valley gets the sunshine, other parts are getting plenty of rain. But will that rain keep the temperatures down? Joining us tonight is Fox 54 Weather Impact Chief Meteorologist Jordan Dressman. Jordan, will the rain help us get through those hot temperatures?
It usually helps for a little bit, but it's kind of dependent on what time of day the rain comes through. If the rain comes through during the early part of the afternoon, then there's plenty of time for any location that did get rain to warm right back up. If the rain comes through during the early part of the evening, then we are typically a little bit cooler. So in some cases, yeah, it does help. And we are talking about a little bit of rain this evening, probably a couple of rumbles of thunder here as well over across northwest Alabama, Colbert down into Franklin counties. Some rain beginning to push its way into Lawrence County. This activity is really beginning to weaken and fall apart, and I would anticipate that it's probably going to continue to do so over the next several minutes. And look, our friends over in northwest Alabama are a little bit cooler since they've seen a little bit of rain. 83 in Florence, 84 in Russellville. We've also seen a little bit of rain over in northeast Alabama. Fort Payne sitting at 85 degrees, but then compare that to Huntsville, who's sitting at 90 degrees, and Fayetteville, who's sitting at 94. Heat indices actually not that bad this evening, but they could be a little bit higher as we head into your Tuesday. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
The city of Decatur announced an employee died after he was struck by a falling tree limb last night. City officials say 2 park employees responded to storm cleanup near the intersection of 4th Avenue and 3rd Street when they were hit by a tree limb. Chris Seal was taken to the hospital with critical injuries where he later died. Seal, who you see in this video, worked for the Decatur Parks and Recreation Department for 21 years, with Mayor Kent Lawrence calling him a valued member of the city's family.
His loss is deeply felt by his co-workers and every one of us who had the privilege of knowing him. We're grateful for Chris's many years of service to our community. Our thoughts and prayers are with his families, friends, and co-workers during this heartbreaking time.
The condition of the second employee hurt in the incident is not known at this time. A judge has granted a motion to waive the preliminary hearing for Tori McLaurin, one of the 5 suspects in the case of missing Huntsville realtor Ronald Dumas Jr. Dumas was last seen December 15, 2024 at Mid-City Liquor in Huntsville with 2 women. He was reported missing just 2 days later. His car was later found abandoned on I-40 near Memphis. Tori McLaurin was wanted as a suspect in Dumas's disappearance and had a warrant for a charge of kidnapping. U.S. Marshals arrested him in Michigan last month. The preliminary hearing was set for this Wednesday, but according to a motion filed last Tuesday, McLaurin had an Aniah's Law hearing on June 25th, which found probable cause. The order advances the case to the Madison County Grand Jury, making a preliminary hearing unnecessary. McLaurin is one of 5 suspects in the disappearance of Dumas, along with Kiera Clark and Quintarius White, who are both in police custody.
Units around to Lake Bottom be advised that there's one subject not breathing and another subject 1097 with weapons on the ground. Checking west, you can get a unit to block Lake Bottom coming from Highway 53. 10-4.
2 men are dead after a shooting at a business on Blake Bottom Road yesterday. The Huntsville Police Department says officers responded to a reported shooting in the 600 block of Blake Bottom Road around 1 a.m. When officers arrived, they found Devontae Vance and Austin Morris suffering from gunshot wounds. Vance was pronounced dead at the scene. Morris was taken to a hospital in critical condition, but later died from his injuries. Investigators determined Vance, Morris, and another person were involved in an altercation that led to the shooting. The third person was detained at the scene and questioned by investigators. A Mobile woman is dead after a 2-vessel crash Saturday night in Baldwin County. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency says the crash happened around 8 p.m. near Wolf Bay in Baldwin County. 46-year-old Kristen Delaney of Mobile was riding on an Albury Brothers boat when it collided with a Key West boat. Delaney was taken to South Baldwin Hospital, where she later died. Another passenger on the Albury Brothers boat and 3 passengers on the Key West boat were also injured. The Food and Drug Administration says a follow-up review of a lettuce sample collected from Taylor Farms determined it was a false positive for Cyclospora. The FDA now says the detection it reported was wrong, and the parasite has not been identified in test samples to this point. This comes after the company voluntarily recalled its iceberg lettuce grown in central Mexico amid a Cyclospora outbreak. According to the Alabama Department of Public Health, officials are tracking 28 reported cases, including 22 cases in the Northern District. So far, no Alabama cases have been directly linked to the widespread outbreak. As the outbreak continues to be investigated, health officials want medical providers to be on the lookout.
If you have a positive test, your healthcare provider, your laboratory will report that to us. We will follow up in terms of investigation to see if we can obtain additional information from the person regarding where they may have been, the foods they may have eaten. And of course, we're in communication at the national level with other states, what's going on in other states, what they're doing, what they're seeing.
Landers also says food should be completely cooked and fruits and vegetables should be thoroughly washed. While cooking food will eliminate the threat, washing food will largely reduce the organism. An aerospace and defense company announced it's expanding its Huntsville facility, a move expected to create about 150 new high-skilled jobs. Redwire Corp announced a 164,000 square foot expansion of its facility today. The expanded campus will increase production of multiple aerospace and national security projects. The expansion includes over $8 million in state and local economic development incentives, according to officials. Redwire officials say the expansion will further solidify Alabama's leadership in aerospace and defense, with Mayor Tommy Battle saying he's looking forward to supporting their continued success. The U.S. military has identified the 2 soldiers killed in the Iranian strikes on an air base in Jordan on Friday. According to the Department of Defense, one of the victims was 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez of Texas. The second victim was 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler Feehan of Hawaii. The deaths marked the first American casualties resulting from the Iranian strikes since March. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says they're grateful for the sacrifices of who he calls American heroes.
Nothing the military does is safe. It's all inherently dangerous, and we're just grateful to have such heroic Americans in uniform in the service of our countries. And obviously, it goes without saying, we're praying for their families and praying for their souls. And we are grateful that we have people like that serving us, both those who we have lost and those who at this very moment are on the watch and defending our interests around the world.
17 U.S. service members have now died in the nearly 5-month war. The White House announced that President Donald Trump will attend the dignified transfer of the 2 service members when they arrive Tuesday evening at Dover Air Force Base. Meanwhile, the national average cost for a gallon of regular gas is back to $4. The second time that price has jumped at the pump have hit the $4 mark during the war with Iran. According to AAA, the cost for a gallon of gas in Alabama has risen to $3.64, 14 cents higher than last week in Huntsville. Drivers are paying an average of $3.58, a 15-cent increase from last week. Drivers in Decatur are paying $3.55 per gallon, up 14 cents from last week. And drivers in the Shoals are paying $3.56 per gallon, up 10 cents from last week.
We're just trying to get in front of it, just like everyone else is.
A big debate in Decatur over where tech companies can build data centers. City leaders weigh in on the new zoning proposal coming up. In 57 years after Neil Armstrong's historic first steps on the moon, NASA is getting ready to go back. We look at the legacy of Apollo 11 next. The city of Decatur is looking to get ahead of a growing technological trend, but not without some major debates. City leaders met this morning to consider a new zoning ordinance regulating where data centers can be built in the city. Decatur isn't the only city looking to regulate where data centers can be built. Cities across the Tennessee Valley look to put tighter regulations or even moratoriums on data centers, like those now in place in Fort Payne and Coleman. Previous proposals in Decatur aimed to put a tight cap on the size of these facilities, but leaders ultimately decided to pump the brakes. Ordinance number 26-4647 looks to reclassify data centers as a special exception use. This means developers can only build data centers in areas zoned for industrial properties, and they must seek formal approval rather than building by right. But the grand topic of discussion during Monday's council meeting was size. The initial draft capped data centers at 10,000 square feet, something Planning Director Chad Bowman says would help protect the community's quality of life before large tech companies arrive.
We're just trying to get in front of it, just like everyone else is. This is not an uncommon trend in the U.S. and definitely in the state of Alabama. We're just trying to get ahead of it before and prepare ourselves for what may come.
Bowman notes that Decatur has provisions for micro or medium data centers rather than hyperscale facilities due to power and water consumption concerns. However, Councilman Barry Bullard pushed back, criticizing the restraint on tech growth.
You know, today it's data centers. What's it going to be next week? I'm just saying that I don't think you understand the technology. I don't think you understand that the cooling requirements of a data center is not much different than some of the other industry.
After much discussion, the council approved a motion to delete the size cap restrictions and keep the ordinance as is for right now. Developers will still have to address health, safety, noise, and adverse environmental impacts before approval. But for now, size restraints are off the table. City leaders noted that while the ordinance remains less restrictive for now, they will revisit the text at a later date if they feel tighter limits are necessary to protect Decatur's resources. So the city of Decatur has officially set 2 legal notices tied to the zoning amendment. The next step is a formal public hearing on the proposal, which is scheduled for August 17th at 10 a.m. Local students are reaching for the stars, learning side by side with a retired NASA astronaut, how they're designing experiments for the space station coming up.
A heat advisory is going to remain in place across almost all of North Alabama, southern Middle Tennessee through Tuesday evening. What does that mean for your Tuesday and beyond? We'll talk about it in just a couple of minutes.
We're County 911. What's the address of your emergency room? Okay, your wife is in a bar. You said she's unresponsive.
This is what he's going to tell you.
How to get out of that situation.
And I grabbed the gun.
Trying to find the first place to put a body.
No, sir. The only thing they could do was kill him.
You want to say anything? We, the jury, and to find the defendant.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was the words heard around the world. Today marks the 57th anniversary of when Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon. According to NASA, the primary goal of the 8-day trip was to complete a goal set by John F. Kennedy to perform a crewed lunar landing and return to Earth. Another purpose was to gather samples of surface materials to bring back to Earth. In total, 12 people would walk on the moon between 1969 and 1972. NASA plans to return humanity to the surface of the moon during the Artemis 4 mission, which is expected to launch in 2028.
Kind of a warm evening across North Alabama, southern Middle Tennessee. Of course, that's kind of dependent on where you're at. This is how hot it feels outside. It feels like it's 100 degrees in Huntsville, Athens, and Decatur. And honestly, when you consider the fact that we're under a heat advisory. These heat indices are not that bad. Also, when you consider the fact that it is late July, this is kind of what you would expect. Now, the heat indices have really begun to drop across both northwest Alabama and northeast Alabama over the last couple of hours because those are the folks that have seen a little bit of rain. Speaking of, that's exactly what we're talking about this evening, a little bit of rain hanging out across northeast Alabama. We're also talking about a little bit of rain hanging out across northwest Alabama. Now, this activity was packing a bit of a punch about an hour ago. Not so much anymore. Maybe a little bit of heavy rain, but that's about it. And it's going to continue to weaken as it pushes its way into Lawrence County here over the next 10 or 15 minutes. Off to the Gulf we go. We're talking about an area of low pressure that is aptly named Tropical Depression 2. There's a chance that it's probably going to get a real name, and I believe next up on the list would be Bertha. Now, if it becomes Bertha, it's really not going to do a whole lot over the next day or so, probably going to strengthen into a tropical storm with winds of 50 miles per hour, but that'll be about it. Otherwise, it's going to kind of ride the Gulf Coast over the next couple of days, weakening into an area of low pressure before making some sort of contact with the state of Texas as we head into the later part of the work week. I say some sort of contact because I don't even necessarily want to say landfall, because it's going to be just an area of low pressure, and right now it only has winds of 35 miles per hour. It'll have absolutely no impact on us here across the Tennessee Valley, but I thought it was worth a mention. Scattered showers are going to be in the forecast almost every single day through the forecast period. Now, no day is going to be a washout, but understand that it is summer, and therefore rain is going to be in the forecast every single day. We're also continuing to talk about a heat advisory that's going to be with us until 8 p.m. on Tuesday, in place for everybody except DeKalb County over in northeast Alabama. Now, it's not necessarily that it's going to be cold over there. It's just that their heat indices should be a couple of degrees below the threshold for a heat advisory, which is 105, by the way. We'll talk about some increased heat indices again, of course, as we head into your Tuesday, but then through Wednesday, Thursday, they begin to drop off, and then below criteria as we head into Friday and Saturday, typical of everything that you would expect in the summer, really Wednesday through Saturday. So tomorrow, honestly, going to be the only hot day. 90 degrees in Huntsville, but compare that to 77 in Florence, where they have seen some rain. 89 in Fayetteville, 87 in Coleman, 88 degrees in Arab. We drop into the mid-70s through the overnight, not bad. 75 degrees, maybe just a touch warm. A little bit of patchy, dense fog. We saw some of that this morning. I had some in Owens Crossroads when I woke up this morning. Tomorrow, not bad if you need to mow the grass. I honestly made the mistake of mowing mine on Saturday. The grass was still too wet for that. 89 at 11, 93 by 2 p.m. We'll finish the day right around 93 or 94, 91 on Wednesday. Back to the upper 80s we go. That'll be kind of nice. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 88, 89, 88. And then we see temperatures climb as we head into the extreme later days of July. 91 on Sunday, 95 next Monday.
Well, some local students got the chance to learn from an astronaut today as part of a 2-day program to go for launch. The nonprofit program promotes STEM learning for space enthusiasts by designing a real experiment with the potential to make it on board the International Space Station. They're getting hands-on experience to working side by side with a retired NASA astronaut who tells FOX54 it's a nationwide effort to get students engaged with space.
That's what they're working on right now, this minute, is talking amongst their groups, what experiment would we like to send to space? And they're designing experiments. And they didn't walk in this morning with an idea to send to space, but with talking to us and Michelle teaching them that, hey, one of your ideas might go to the International Space Station, be an experiment in space. Now they're thinking, wow, yeah, maybe we could do this.
The Go for Launch program is hosted by Higher Orbits, which brings this event to cities across the United States. To learn more and get involved, go to fox54.com.
That's a pretty cool opportunity. In the meantime, let's talk a little sports. Talking season officially underway in the SEC as Media Days begin today in Florida. We've got all that content next on Fox 54.
Fox 54 Plus has your news, sports, and weather. Start your evening with Fox 54 at 5:30, delivering the latest headlines and live reports straight from the scene. Then stay informed with Fox 54 News at 9, featuring your Tennessee Valley certified most accurate weather impact team, tracking everything from tornado threats to traffic delays during severe weather. Fox 54 Sports Extra brings you more of what sports fans crave, with deeper insights, expert analysis, and all the action that matters most. On Fox 54 Plus, you'll also find Alabama politics, plus 24/7 weather radar and real-time forecasts to keep you ahead of the storm. Looking for a quick recap? Don't miss Fox 54 Week in Review, highlighting the biggest stories of the week. Jumpstart your morning with Morning Rush, fast-paced news updates featured with uplifting stories from across the globe. Get your entertainment fix with Getting Real, where we break down movie reviews, top 10 lists, and spotlight the newest film. Die Hard fan? Locked On Sports dives deep into the Crimson Tide, the Tigers, college rivalries, and pro action. True crime warrior style? Killer Cases brings you gripping real-life stories that stick with you. Hungry for more? Cooking with Style serves up mouth-watering recipes that are easy to make and impossible to resist. From movie previews before you head to the theater with Take a Look, to must-know headlines from across the region and around the world with In the News. Watch all of these shows on demand and also on the Fox 54 News app. Available on Android and iOS devices. Streaming 24/7.
Football season in the Southeastern Conference begins in exactly 6 weeks, and after that, there'll be a race to Atlanta for the SEC Football Championship. Well, today, talking season officially began, but in a new location. Football Media Days beginning today in Tampa, Florida for the first time. Commissioner Greg Sankey kicking off the day by commending the efforts of the SEC and congratulating 13 programs that won national titles across the board in their 22 sponsored sports. Unfortunately, football was not one of them. Commissioner Sankey also shared that loads of frustration with other power conferences made SEC officials think about moving away from the NCAA.
And so understand that beneath the observation is frustration. But I also know the pride with which I spoke of 13 national championships, and there is meaning and value. And I do think a national expectation that we participate in a national organization. But that national organization must function in a healthy manner. Otherwise, that simmering will continue.
Now, Commissioner Sankey also spoke about the future of SEC Football Media Days. Next summer, the annual session returning to Nashville, and it will take place on July the 12th through the 15th. This will be the SEC's second venture in the Music City for the annual kickoff. They also did so back in 2023. Now, our SEC Football Media Days coverage continues tonight on Fox 54. We'll check in with the Missouri Tigers and the Tennessee Volunteers as they talk about 2026. Let's send it back to Logan.
Coming up tonight at 9, friends and family of Nolan Wells gathering to lay the teenager to rest while demanding answers for his death. We'll take you to Mississippi. And cases of cyclosporisis continue to rise in Alabama. We speak with Alabama Department of Public Health about what you should know about the illness. And today marks the 57th anniversary of when man first stepped on the moon. We'll show you how the Rocket City is celebrating tonight at 9. 2 paddleboarders in Texas saved a drowning raccoon in the Colorado River on Tuesday. Tucker Ollinger and Owen Lee were fishing in the rain when they saw an animal in distress in the water. They paddled closer and realized it was a raccoon. Ollinger reached his paddle out to the furry animal, helping him climb aboard. They reached land and the raccoon was seen running to safety without a second look.
Listen, I'm all about animal welfare and whatnot, but the risk reward of putting an animal that carries rabies on a paddleboard with me is just, it ain't there. My sister-in-law recently had a bat in her house. And so they had to get treated for rabies. They didn't actually have it. But the treatment process is lengthy and not fun.
Well, you know, they probably thought it was like a dog or something, and then by the time they put the paddleboard out, they realized it was a raccoon, and it was just too late at that point. They had to save the poor thing.
I mean, I feel I'd have called somebody maybe. I don't know. Just it's not worth it's not worth it.
No, ma'am, not at all.
Nope. Well, that's all we have for you tonight. Have a good evening.